Just tell me when you're ready, please. Good morning, everyone. In the absence of Councillor Collins, I'll be chairing the meeting today. I'm Joe Florent, Councillor. Open the meeting and call it to order. Are there any additions or amendments to the agenda? Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Florent. I'd like to add to the agenda one item called Kids Castle, if I may,
Where would you like that? Under unfinished business, maybe?
wherever we could put it.
Not under new business?
Thank you.
Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
Sure.
Motion put forward by Councillor Kuyak, seconded by Mayor Laval. The matters before us today, does anybody wish to disclose a pecuniary interest? There are none noted. We'll move right along with the presentation, and the first one is Steve MacArthur. I believe he's on Zoom. Go ahead, Steve.
Good morning. Thank you very much. And I believe Joe and Bill were probably on council the last time I presented. So see you folks again for the rest of you, and including the mayor. My name is Steve MacArthur. I am the Municipal and Stakeholder Relations Account Manager for the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation. It's a mouthful, but basically what it means is I serve the territory from South Algonquin, north to Temagami, east to Mattawa, Matawan, and west to West Nipissing. So I have 19 municipalities, of which South Algonquin and Whitney are one. I'm going to, Tracy and I gave this a test run, so I hope everything goes well. I'm going to start by, if I can get you to watch a little 2-minute video, because it really sets the context for the presentation. And this is the about how the property taxes are calculated. It's a good refresher for those who have been on council, and for those who haven't, it might really answer a lot of questions on how we do what we do and how it affects your municipality. So while she's playing this, I'm going to stop my video so we don't have any issues, and I'll come back on after. Should note, you might have to watch an ad here or skip it.
Someone like you.
Property taxes are based on your home's value. What you might not know is that an increase in your home's value doesn't necessarily mean your taxes will go up. To explain, let's take a look at how your property taxes are calculated. Imagine there's a town that only has 3 homes, and they're each worth a different amount. The total cost to provide all of the town's services is $1,200. This is collected through property taxes. Each homeowner pays property taxes based on their home's assessed value. So we take the total cost of services and divide it by the total property value. This tax rate is applied to all the houses to get enough money to pay for the town's services. Each homeowner pays according to the assessed value of their home, and every 4 years, the houses are reassessed. Let's say all 3 properties have gone up equally in value. The total cost of services hasn't changed, but the total property value has increased. When this happens, there will be a decrease in the tax rate. Now, when we apply that new rate on all the homes, everyone still pays the same. Now, let's say another 4 years has gone by and these homes are reassessed. During this time, the house on the right gains more market value than the other 2. The total value of all the homes have increased, which means the town has to calculate a new tax rate. With this new tax rate, the first 2 homes will actually pay less than the home on the right that was reassessed at a higher value. Since the cost of services hasn't changed, the town doesn't need to collect more property taxes on the whole. However, since property taxes are based on a home's value, taxes for each individual home could potentially go up or down based on the rest of the homes. So what happens when the cost to provide services goes up? Well, it means more property taxes need to be collected from every home, and a new tax rate is calculated. To get the new rate, we take that amount that the town now needs and divide it by all of the property values. The new rate is applied to all the homes, and now everyone has to pay the new tax amount to continue to fund the town's services. So let's review. 1, property taxes are based on the assessed value of a home. If all assessments go up equally, everyone pays the same. 2, if all assessments do not go up equally, there's a redistribution of the tax. 3, if the town's cost to provide services increases, the municipality may choose to increase the tax rate. When this happens, everyone pays their share of that increase. And that explains the relationship between property value and property taxes.
Thanks, Tracy. That worked out well. So, and if you could jump to the next slide, please, when you're ready. Okay, so what that video is showing you is that our work here at MPAC, we assess properties. We assess the value of all properties in Ontario. And we do that under the guise of the Ministry of Finance and the provincial government, who is responsible for setting the taxation and assessment legislation, as well as the policies that go with it. So they also determine the education property tax rate, which is out of your folks' hands. And there's also an independent body that adjudicates appeals of MPAC's assessed values, known as the ARB, or the Assessment Review Board. So that all falls under the provincial jurisdiction. We at MPAC, we're an independent not-for-profit corporation. We're funded by the Ontario municipalities we serve, and our role, as I said, is to assess and classify the properties in Ontario. And we do this in compliance with the Assessment Act and the regulations sent to us by the government. So the municipalities, you determine the budget requirements, set the tax rates, and collect property taxes to pay for all the services you provide: police, fire, roads, recreation, water, any special projects, things like that, as the video just demonstrated. So the municipalities take MPAC's assessments and they establish the tax rate, and it really becomes a distribution mechanism for the taxes. Okay, that spreads it out amongst the different property types and the different values, and that's how you collect the taxes to run your municipality. And the property owner, of course, is at the end and pays the property tax bill, as you and I do, and everyone else who lives in a municipality in Ontario. Questions on that as we go along, or we can save them till the end, whichever you prefer. So far, so good. Go ahead.
Well, I just going to say, it doesn't appear that there are any questions from the table.
Thank you. Next slide, please, Tracy. Okay, so as you can imagine, maintaining the Ontario property database is pretty important, especially for the smaller municipalities. The property data is continually updated so that your records are accurate when you're making important tax decisions. So what we do on an ongoing basis is inspect and assess new construction additions and renovations promptly. So your CBO, Mike Anderson, sends us building permit files, and we ingest those, and then we visit your community on a few occasions throughout the year as those get closed off and occupancy is granted. And we add that value to the roll. We also respond to property inquiries and work with owners and taxpayers to understand the assessment and the taxation associated with it. And then we support the municipalities with our ongoing support services. We have a product called Municipal Connect that I am working with your staff constantly on and using, that they use. That's their portal to the assessment world. And we work on other collaborative projects like the digital building permit and building plan uploads that have worked so well in the last couple of years, especially through COVID. So we have important statutory duties such as handling requests for reconsideration, maintaining people data, tracking school support, etc. And we do this for over 5.5 million properties in Ontario. Next slide, please. Okay, just bear with me one moment. So in addition to that work that's ongoing, we monitor the market and assess newly built and renovated properties, and to keep our property data current. So I can tell you in South Algonquin, we were out there this fall, did a number of property visits. We try and be efficient and responsible to the taxpayer. So we typically do that at the end of the summer before a roll close, so that they can be added for the next year's taxation. We also periodically update every single property assessment in Ontario based on the same legislated valuation date. So we call this the assessment update or the reassessment. This hasn't happened since 2016. We were literally days from the assessment notices going out in 2020 when the government paused the reassessment, because we were of course, dealing with much bigger problems globally. And so we've been waiting since that time for the call on the next reassessment, and to take that bullet out of your gun. I don't have no information as to when the next date will be, but we will certainly be consulting with you when the government announces that. Next slide, please, Tracy. So the reassessment that was scheduled to occur in 2020 and postponed gave us an opportunity to do a few things. We cleared off a backlog of many appeals and requests for reconsideration. We updated all of our property database across the province, and we continued to add new construction and new value to the roll. So the property assessments at this time then are still based on the valuation date of January 1st, 2016. And if we want nothing else to come out of this presentation, it's that when that new assessment date is announced and when the reassessment occurs, if we refer back to the video that you just watched, the impact of that really is a collective effort between the municipalities and the assessment role. Next slide, please, Tracy. It's because the Ontario tax system is based on everyone paying their portion of what it costs to deliver the community services. That's the bottom line. It's about the distribution of assessment and distribution of the tax burden. And so the way we do that is all properties are assigned a value at a common valuation date, as noted on the previous slide. And this in principle is called current value assessment. So it's the price the property might reasonably expect to sell for if it's sold by a willing seller to a willing buyer after appropriate time and exposure on the open market. That's how we do what we do. Next slide, please, Tracy. And really what I'm here as new council and in new term is to tell you that although we don't know the new valuation date, we know what's coming, and we're ready when it does come. So we wait the provincial announcement, but until that time, all the values are still based on that January 1, 2016 date, which means that the property values as part of the 2022 and 2023 tax years will continue to be based on that date. Once the province announces when the next assessment update will take place and what the valuation date will be, we will let you know, and we will work with you to have meaningful conversations to work to finalize assessed values within the community and assess the impact and what that means. Next slide, please, Tracy. So the other part of the assessment cycle is explaining what happens when that assessment update occurs. So for instance, if your property were to increase $10,000 in value, as an example, or $100,000, whatever the case may be, that is not lumped into the first year of the reassessment. This is called phase-in. It's a phase-in from the valuation date over the 4-year assessment cycle. So in year 1, it would increase by 25,000. In year 2, it would increase by 50,000. In year 3, by 75,000, until you got to that full increase of 100,000. The idea of the phase-in program, which was introduced by the province, is to provide an additional level of property tax stability and predictability, both for property owners and for municipalities. So when properties experience a market increase in the assessed value between assessment updates, an increase is phased in gradually over those 4 years. Next slide, please, Trace. And then we talk about when we're looking at the valuation of residential properties, and in, you know, in South Algonquin, the vast majority are residential or seasonal recreational. We consider, the spreadsheet has over many fields, but we consider over 200 factors. But the above five, the five that you see on the slide, make up approximately 85% of a typical home's value. So location, lot size or lot dimensions, the quality of the construction of the home, the exterior square footage, and the age of the property. And the age of the property gets adjusted for any major renovations or additions that occur over the cycle. And I should note that that quality of construction, when I say the spreadsheet is quite detailed, we basically know through building permits and through site visits whether you would have granite countertops or laminate or, you know, in-floor heating or that type of detail on a build, and that can impact value. Next slide, please, Tracy. So that's residential assessment. We also, of course, we do all properties across Ontario and across all different classes, and so we use for instance in the mills, in the lumber mills or the large gravel pits or those types of things, we use a cost approach. So this approach is used when the property type is unique and it's rarely sold on the open market. So we can't rely on that direct comparison approach, or the income approach. The income approach then determines its current value due to lack of data being available. So the cost approach is basically, we calculate the cost of replacing the buildings and the structures, and then we apply a deduction for depreciation of all those structures due to ages and also any sort of economic obsolescence, which is a whole nother presentation. And then we determine the value of the land and add it to the building calculations for the overall assessment. Next slide, Trace. So what draws our attention to a property? When do we do what we do? It's typically one of the things that you'll see here. A market sale, a request from the municipality and or the property owner. And believe it or not, we're getting more and more property owners contacting us, especially after new builds, because they know the tax bill is coming. So they want us to add it to the assessment roll and get that process started sooner rather than later, so they're not receiving a large retroactive tax bill. Also, building permit activity will trigger that. So as I said, we get the regular uploads of all permits from the municipality, and when they're closed off, we do that inspection. And then an RFR and appeal, so a request for reconsideration or appeal. If property owners don't agree with their assessment, they have that right, and we make adjustments based on those processes if necessary. So basically, MPAC's role is to take those building permits and those plans and turn them into assessment for the communities. So our municipal stakeholders, you rely on the MPAC assessments to levy the property tax, and the sooner we can deliver that assessment, the sooner the municipal stakeholders can realize that new revenue. So every year we process on average 300,000 plus building permits for new developments and renovations across the province. Next slide, please, Tracy. If someone doesn't agree, as I said, they have opportunity to appeal, and resolving assessments concerns is work that's ongoing. We have cleared off through this pause in the assessment, as I said, many appeals and requests for reconsideration. And right now things are quiet, and they should be, because all of the assessment values are based on that January 1st, 2016 rate. So if someone, for instance, was claiming that the impact of COVID affected their property value, that would not be a valid reason for a request for reconsideration or an appeal. And the reason for that is that all the assessments, again, are based on January 1st, 2016, which predated the COVID crisis. So, so that has not yet been reflected in any assessed value of a property. Next slide, please, Tracy. But of course, you know, in addition, we talk about the relationship between the property taxes and the assessment and the distribution of those taxes. We don't determine the taxes that are paid. We are not the taxman. When a province-wide reassessment occurs, the most important factor is not how much the assessed value of a property has changed, but as the video demonstrated, but rather how the assessed value has changed relative to the average change in that class in the community. This concept was also explained in an impact toolkit that was shared with municipalities just a few weeks back. And I can certainly follow up and send that again if that's of interest to council. Next slide, Trace. So that toolkit is part of a strategy that we're embarking on, which includes my presentation to you folks here this morning. It's just making you aware of where we are, what we're expecting moving forward, and making you aware of the resources that are out there. And honestly, it's about educating. So there are many out there maybe watching the recording or even around council chambers who maybe don't really fully grasp the connection between assessment and taxation, and my goal is to try and explain that a little bit better here. Our goal at MPAC is about getting the assessment right. It's about assessing the value of property and of buildings and providing those to the municipality in a stable role so that you can base your property taxation on that. Next slide. And I would encourage everyone, especially those new to council, to subscribe to the In Touch newsletter. It's a municipal newsletter, so there's stories of interest from neighboring municipalities or similar municipalities all over the province. You can also follow us on our social media feeds, and of course we have an unbelievable resource library at mpac.ca. Next slide, please, Tracy. But ultimately, I'm a realist, and the easiest way for you to help out your constituents and answer their questions is to point them to me. That's my contact information. I don't expect that you should have to answer questions about assessment or, and certainly we do a back and forth. If the question is about taxation, I will direct them to the municipality. If the question is about their assessment, they direct them to me. And that's an ongoing relationship that we have. I can tell you that if someone contacts me and says, you know, when I ask them why they're reaching out to me and they say my taxes are too high, and I'll explain that we do the assessment, and I'll ask, do you think you could sell your property for that amount right now? And if they say, no, I could sell it for a lot more than that, then the conversation is short. So a lot of times the issue is about the taxation and not about the assessment, because right now with the assessed values being based on that January 1, 2016 number, they're quite low comparative to where they could be in a few years. And so again, we'll work together with you when that time comes to get out in front of the reassessment and do the education piece so that people understand what that means and how it impacts them moving forward. And that's all I had for you, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time. I'll come back on the video.
Does anybody have any questions of Steve before he leaves? Go ahead, Sean.
Yes, Councillor Pigeon speaking.
Hi.
January 1st, 2016, okay, that was the last time that's the reassessment, I believe is the term. I'm new to this.
Yep.
When was that before? When was the term before that? What year was it?
That would be January 1st, 2012.
2012, so every 4 years, okay. Was there a considerable jump?
Yeah, there was a jump. I mean, now we've missed a whole cycle, and we know, Councillor Pigeon, that we've seen what has happened in the market, correct? We all have, right? And COVID has exacerbated that, where we see more and more people moving north and moving into beautiful areas like Township of South Algonquin and bringing with them investments. So we're constantly monitoring that market and what that means, and trying to work with the government to pick the right time to come out with the reassessment. But again, the message and why I'm here talking to you in advance of that is to say, everybody just calm. Even if the assessments jump significantly, which we expect that they would after 8 years of pause, that there should be an opportunity to level that out and just distribute it amongst the townships so that there's not a huge increase in taxes.
Yeah. The reason why I asked this question is because should we prepare ourselves for an influx of complaints? That's.
I'm going to be honest, probably. I don't. People typically what's happened in the past, and the reason that we're trying to get out in front of it again is what's happened in the past cycles is you get your assessment notice from MPAC, and many people don't pay attention to it, right? So they see the increase or they put it in the recycling, and they really don't pay attention to it till the tax bill comes in, which can be many months later. And by then, if there's a disagreement in their assessed value, or they wish to file a request for reconsideration or appeal, a lot of times it's too late because there's a legislative window within a time frame to do that. So that's written right on the notice. So people should pay attention to their notice, and if they disagree. But the very first question they need to ask themselves is, when that valuation date is established, could they sell their property for that amount on an open market? Do they feel that it's fair value for their property?
Yeah, because that's I think that's we're gonna have to prepare ourselves for a rebuttal as such, because the first people that get the flag are the elected officials, right?
Of course, and that's why I wanted to get out and meet you, and I would like to do that in person, and we will when the weather's not so treacherous. And but the idea is that I want you to direct those to me, and I wanted to arm you with a few basic tools on how it works, so that there's a common understanding that the an increase in assessment value does not necessarily mean an increase in taxation. It could mean that, and in some cases it could mean status quo or lower, even depending on what the municipality's priorities are, what your projects are, what your spending has to be, your increases and things like that. So, and it's also important to note that we know that all properties don't increase in value the same way, right? If there's a finite amount of waterfront, for example. So waterfront values tend to go up higher and quicker than others. And that's all based on their value on the open market. So.
Okay, thank you for answering that.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Mayor LaValle?
Thank you. Well, Steve, thank you for the wonderful presentation. It's always nice to know how this happens and how it works, and to be able to, like you said, not to be the authors of this, but they run into a problem to refer them to you. I just wanted to say that Councillor Thornton and I are kind of dating ourselves, but you know what? Impact's come a long way in 15, 20 years. I can remember sitting through, as Councillor Floyd was saying this morning, some impact presentation, and it was kind of dry and boring. So I'm glad that you condensed it, and that it's it's something that you can look at very quickly, not to take away from the work that impact people did back in the day, but it just shows that you're moving ahead with how people are teaching and learning today. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mayor. And I understand that you were previously Mayor, and I'm sorry I missed that term of office, but I've been with MPAC for 7 years now, and I can honestly say that the transition in that time has been amazing to watch. We are trying to be more proactive, be out there and the tool that we provide to your employees through Municipal Connect really does peel back the curtain on all the work we do. And they have unprecedented access to a lot of that information now. So there really has been an effort, and I very much appreciate those comments, and we'll pass them on. So, thank you.
Steve, very likely you were still in school when Mayor LaValle was mayor before. You opened the door to that.
He's really asking.
Okay, thank you, Steve. If there's no other questions, thanks, Steve.
I'll be out to see you in the spring, and I wish you all the best of luck and happy holidays. And thanks for giving me a few minutes on your agenda this morning.
I'll probably see you in Parry Sound at the convention in the spring.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave.
Bye now. Thanks, Tracy.
Okay, next on the agenda is Forbes Simon from J2PG. You want to come up to the table? Sure.
So right when I made the agenda up, Anthony, we know you were coming. So.
I'm not offended. We'll share the spotlight here.
Thank you very much for the time before you this morning. Tracy's provided each of you with an issues and options report. And this report is the culmination of the first of two phases of your official plan review and update. So phase one involves consultation, reviewing documents, interviews. And that's the review part. And this document identifies the findings of that review and we've identified areas where additional study and research needs to be done and where we think you need to have policy improvements in your official plan. This document is the primary deliverable in that first phase of the project. And just to back up for the new councillors, the Planning Act requires that municipalities review and update their official plan 10 years after it first comes into play, and then every 5 years after that. And your official plan was adopted in and around 2013, I believe, which makes now the perfect time to be reviewed and updated. The council adopted the plan in 2012, and then it took 2 years to get approved by the ministry. So
We started working on it 2 years before that.
yes, sir. Well, hopefully we can make it a quicker process this time around. So, so you're required to do this review. There's processes set out in the Planning Act to follow, but the methodology we followed is sort of a JP2G approach of creating this issues and options report, breaking the project into two phases. And the purpose today is to get your direction on this report. Does it encompass what you think should be included in the document? Are there things that are understated or overstated? And then that will help us going forward to actually do research, come forward with discussion papers, and start formulating policy and then over the next 6 months. So to date, we've done some agency consultation and outreach. We had a meeting with Municipal Affairs and some of their partner ministries. Ministry of Municipal Affairs is the approval authority for your official plan. So we need to work with them to make sure we're updating the document in such a way that it's going to get approved. Right? There's fights with the province on planning matters usually end up not necessarily in the municipality's favor. So it's best to avoid some of that. We also, in addition to reaching out to agencies, we did hold a series of 2 special meetings back in August of this year. that were an outreach to the community. It's sort of a notice of commencement to the community. We're starting to study, are there things in the community that you would like to see fixed or addressed that have a planning basis? And so we got a lot of comments. The both open houses and or the public meetings were very, very well attended. Issues like lot sizes, minimum lot size, development on private roads, Airbnbs, affordable housing, how to deal with trailers, and ensuring that there's respect for our Indigenous communities and that they're engaged in the process. So all of these comments have come together and have helped formulate our recommendation to you. In addition, we worked with Tracy and established a website presence. So on your website, there's a page that's dedicated to this project. It's got background information that has the ability for the community to provide input just with a click of a button. And that's been fairly effective. And we've got quite a few comments through that system. We also, one of the biggest components is making sure that you get or you capture the essence of the community. An official plan should not be this generic document that looks the same from one community to another. It should reflect the character of the community, the uniqueness of the community. And coming from outside of your community, it's really important that we have these interviews with staff and council to make sure that we're capturing what is critical in the community, what is the essence of moving forward and planning for a robust future. And so we did conduct phone interviews with the staff and the council that were at the time. And there were many, many points that we were able to pick out from that. Again, affordable housing, lot sizes, these types of issues kept coming forward. In terms of the economy, it was recognition that the tourism and forestry industries were the primary drivers, and that we need to make sure that we're getting the best and the most out of those industries we can. In terms of who's going to move here, who should we be attracting? What's the future demographics of the community going to be? Many people acknowledge the trend of retiring to your cottage and converting your cottage into a year-round residence. Though there was a desire to see more young people move to the community, families, supporting recreation, education services. There was also an acknowledgement of the need to reach out to new Canadians and people that are moving to our country and bringing them from the urban areas out to the rural communities on a go-forward basis. Climate change is a new issue in the planning world. The provincial policy statement requires that we give consideration to that. It was a topic that we talked to you about. I think you reflected the general sense that rural municipalities are really struggling with how to deal with climate change. You know, it's not that we have public transit and we can get smaller lot sizes and build apartment buildings and more people on an acre of land. We can't do that out here. So how can we start getting a smaller carbon footprint? And that there are many sort of options and available to you. It's a conversation I've had quite a bit over the last 2 years with municipalities, and there are some definite strategies for you to consider moving forward, and we'll have a sort of a discussion paper on that topic. The other thing is that the two hamlets, village areas, would be the ideal location for new growth and development. But the idea of concentrating too much growth and development on well and septic system is a limitation, right? And I think most people recognize that. So making sure that the development we do is sustainable for the long run. And that's something that we need to think about. At this point in time, I think what I'm going to do is hand it over to Anthony, and he can walk through the preliminary lists of issues and the recommendations we've set up for you. So this is in the section 5.2 of your report.
Perfect. Thanks, Forbes. Did anybody have any general questions before we jump into the real meat and potatoes here? No. Okay. So as Forbes mentioned, a key component of the issues and options report was this section 5.2, the planning assessment table, where we went through, actually taking a step back before we did kick off the process with Tracy and then with the 2 special public meetings. Forbes and I had gone through and actually maybe just to take one step even further back, as you'll be aware, the province has what's called the provincial policy statement, and the provincial policy statement sets out the framework for planning and development in the province of Ontario. And so one of the key requirements of the Planning Act is that all municipal official plans need to comply with the provincial policy statement and need to insert certain components that are province-wide interests into the local official plans. And so that's why one Forbes was mentioning that certain things that, you know, there may be some reluctance to include, or sort of differences of opinion. Sometimes there's really not a whole lot of give on certain things. So Forbes and I did our own review of the provincial policy statement, and the provincial policy statement was actually updated fairly recently in 2020. So the South Algonquin official plan has actually been in effect for 2 provincial policy statements. There was one in 2014 that was updated in 2020. So, and it's changed quite a bit from 2014 to 2020, as you might imagine. So prior to the kickoff meeting and the special public meetings, Forbes and I went through the provincial policy statement and identified what we thought were the key policy areas that needed to be addressed or that needed to be explored to be addressed in the official plan update. And then subsequent to the public consultation, as well as the meeting that we had with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and some of the other partner ministries, the list grew, and to add a few other sections or areas to look at. And that's been reflected in the issues and options assessment table that we have here. So I'm in council's hands if we want to go through the chart line by line, section by section. If everybody's had a chance to review it and had questions or had highlighted specific areas to discuss. But the way we've set the table up is we've got the issues, the broad policy issues. We've got the provincial policy statement reference. Then we've got how it's reflected currently in the South Algonquin official plan. And then we've presented some options based on what we're seeing in other municipalities, based on some of the work that Forbes has done on other official plan review and update projects. So those are what are some options that we've come up with for consideration. So we could go through them line by line, or we could go through them broadly and then circle back to some of the hot button issues, perhaps. As I said, I think we're in council's hands on that one.
I think probably just a broad overview, and if anybody has any specific questions, they can speak up.
Sure.
Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So the first policy issue that as Forbes said, and I'm going to repeat a few of these, the big ones that Forbes mentioned, but the very first one on the list is engagement with Indigenous communities. And so that's language that's been made more robust in the provincial policy statement recently, and currently in the existing South Algonquin official plan, there's no mention of any consultation or communication or even broad Indigenous history in the area. So that's a topic that will need to be addressed in the official plan. And one of the best examples that I've seen at the moment that is one Forbes is actually working on in Montague?
Tay Valley, Tay Valley Township.
Where they've taken, where the township has taken upon itself to include sort of when we talk about the history of the area and what makes South Algonquin unique in the preamble introductory part of the official plan, a robust history of pre-contact settlement in the area to explain that portion of the history as well. So
One of the things that we're finding in a planning context, but also in general, that as we're moving forward with our truth and reconciliation, is recognizing the historic use of the land. Right, and the values are placed on the land and the water and Turtle Island. And I think that telling that story, telling the story of pre-colonial occupation of the land and the use of the land and the relationship with the land is really an important part of truth and acknowledgement of the right holders that the Indigenous communities represent. So it is something, again, you've got a good dialogue with your First Nation communities. It's perhaps more significant in your community than any other I've worked with because of the amount of Crown land and decisions that are being made and efforts. And so, yeah, telling that story, I think, is an easy way to get your plan recognizing the communities.
So, I'm sorry, I had my back to you.
That's okay. I just want to add, I think, if I may, we do have a close connection with the First Nations here. I think it may not be something that's written right down on paper, but we just go down to the office and bang on the door and go in and talk about things that we need to talk about them, and vice versa. So I don't know how you put that in, but I wouldn't want this township to come out looking like we don't have a relationship.
No,
because
and
we do. I think with anything, it could be better, but one suggestion I might make would be and I'd be willing to work with staff on this if council agrees, is to write up some kind of a statement before the document about colonialism, what's happened in the past, if that would be helpful.
Yes, I think it would be, Mayor. Probably what I would do is provide you with this example from Tay Valley, and that maybe it would be a framework to follow. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's one of the first ones that I know that's being done in Eastern Ontario. There are some activities with community official plans over in the Six Nation area, but not too much in Eastern Ontario yet. So I'd be happy to provide that to you. And if there's an opportunity to work with the elders to be able to get their sort of endorsement of those statements, it's all better.
Just secondary to that, yeah, I think that would, if council agrees, that would be helpful. And I think we're unique here, and that we're involved, like the First Nations are involved in the biggest land claim that's ever taken place. So I just want to reinforce the fact that we do have a relationship, even though they're really busy, you know, with a land claim, and you know, the majority of us are new here. So I think we're moving in the right direction. I hope to.
great. Those are all great suggestions, Dan. Thanks.
I agree that all of that, and I think the place for it is in the preamble. I'm not sure if there's any specific place in the plan other than the preamble, because for the most part, although it will not remain that way as we're dealing with Crown land. But once the settlement is finished, a lot of that area will now become residential or privately owned property. So it's going to play a big part in this township in the next 10 years.
It is. There's also two other areas of the plan where there's an acknowledgement. One is with respect to the natural heritage features. The water
Yeah.
is extremely important in First Nation community. And so recognition of their interests in water resources, the healing of some water resources is important. Also, when you get into archaeological assessments, there's very specific wording and requirements for engagement with First Nations when you're dealing with archaeology. But beyond that, I agree 100% that it's sort of context of the plan at the beginning.
Okay. The second policy issue that was that's been highlighted is climate change, and so there's similarly to engagement with indigenous communities. There's a lot of new language in the provincial policy statement about climate change. The current official plan is relatively thin on mentions of climate change. There is mention of promoting energy efficiency, things like that. But as Forbes mentioned, it is difficult for rural municipalities to deal with climate change, address climate change in an official plan. However, that there are, as I mentioned, there are policies from the provincial policy statement that need to find its way in, and we've got some suggestions from the Ministry of Environment with respect to addressing climate change, some policy suggestions and wording from that. So.
My philosophy on climate change, especially in small rural communities, is rather than wasting time, effort, and money fighting climate change, to put that time and effort into adapting to climate change.
I think that's a really important part for rural municipalities is the adaptation. There are a couple of areas where you can get into the reduction in your footprint. Waste management is going to be one of the highest methane producers in your community, and eliminating or diverting the organic stream can help, and that's one area where you can have some effort. The other thing is that there's a lot of work being done right now on the role of wetlands. Wetlands, it's been determined, have more carbon stored in them than the actual forests that surround the wetlands. And protecting those wetlands and preserving that carbon storage is also another sort of area that rural municipalities can get involved with a little bit. Again, we'll have a discussion paper for you on that.
The next policy issue is intensification. And also similarly, as Forbes mentioned, the topic of intensification is a difficult one for rural municipalities, who, especially those that do not have municipal services. So there's only so much you can do on wells and septics. However, there are things that can be looked at. Communal services being one of them is an option that's out there. And there are also new septic technologies. They're called tertiary septic systems, where you can actually shrink the size of your footprint that's required for your septic bed. So there are things that can be looked at in that sense for intensification. And again, these are province-wide. Interest is to direct growth to built up areas already to make use of existing services. And if it's not waters and sewer, at least it's roads, and density can help with climate change as well. So there are this is one too that Forbes mentioned, discussion papers. So I think there's a few of these topics that we will explore in greater detail, and I think we can put together some discussion papers that speak to best practices, that speak to what's going on in some other municipalities that are experiencing similar challenges. So I think intensification is certainly one of those, and I know that when we speak about communal services, so communal wells and communal septics, I know that those are somewhat controversial. They can be very challenging. They require agreements with the municipalities. They require large securities to be held in order to ensure that those systems are maintained properly on an ongoing basis. But it is probably the easiest way to approach intensification in the villages, if that was something that was there was an appetite to explore. Again, that's something we would seek council direction on, but it's an option that's out there. The next one is municipal services. And so that ties very much into the concept of intensification. So I don't think we need to spend a whole lot of time on this one. However, there are just some policies in the provincial policy statement that speak to the a servicing hierarchy that's province-wide, that speaks to full municipal services being the preferred servicing strategy, followed by communal services, followed by individual wells and septic. So that will need to be reflected in the official plan. Just some broad language.
And this is the area where we would also explore the idea of lot sizes. So just as context, right now, the minimum lot size in rural communities ranges from an acre to 2.5 acres, 1 acre to 0.4 hectares to 1 hectare. And when you get into the villages, those lot sizes become silly. They don't work, but we're all on private services, and it triggers the need for things like hydrogeologic studies, and they become expensive and time consuming. And so that whole area of lot size is part of that municipal servicing discussion area. And we're going to provide some education as well as options for you to make sure that you're fully aware of how the lot sizes is dependent upon the ability to service.
And actually, that reminds me that we will also have to look at, but it's changed now. There's so many changes coming to the Planning Act, but previously the Planning Act was amended to require that municipalities allow additional dwelling units as of right. So we'll have to also incorporate that into the discussion of intensification. And that's actually, in addition to communal services, the additional dwelling units is another way to approach intensification in the villages. Yes.
So I don't mean to interrupt, but that came up at the meeting, and I remember having a conversation with Jen when that brought it up, that he might be interested in severing off 2 or 3 lots, but there was a problem with returns of the lot sizes. Do you remember that coming up?
That's happened a couple of times.
Okay.
Yeah, and there is a concern with the lot sizes.
But what can we do about it?
And that's what we're going to explore with you and present options and explain how we got to where we are now and what the rules are and how we can move forward and address that. So I can't make any promises that we're going to be able to create smaller lot sizes, but hopefully we'll all have a better understanding of why they are what they are and what the options are going forward.
The provincial policy on lot size doesn't make any sense, because a hectare isn't a square area. It's a total area.
Yeah.
So they're assuming that, I think policy is built so that they're assuming that it's a square piece of property and it's separated by the same amount of property from the next one. So there's lots of room for septic and well. The truth of it is that most of them that are being subdivided are like 100 feet wide and 600 or 700 feet deep.
Mm-hmm.
So the neighbor is the same distance as if the lots were a half an acre size.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense at all.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever came up with that policy didn't understand landmass at all.
I appreciate that very much. And it comes out of a Ministry of the Environment guidelines and directions, and we can go through those and look at those. We've got people on our team that are experts in this area, and we will certainly rely on their input to be able to provide the facts to you. Okay. But I agree 100%. Sometimes it makes no sense. And I think both Anthony and I would strive to try to have planning make sense. It doesn't always happen, but that's what we try to do, so, yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, there are certainly instances where a 1 acre lot is perfectly suitable for a well and a septic system, and you could have a 5 hectare lot that is all granite and has nowhere to put a well and a septic, and so it's.
There was 2 new lots created on the street that I live on, and one of them has a residence on it now. But they're like 100 feet wide. So there's probably 80% of those lots are not used. It's just, and it's behind the septic and behind the well. It just, if you want a prime example of stupidity, just go and look at those 2 lots. It's the ones below your grandmother's place there.
Okay, the next policy issue area is economic diversification. So Forbes touched on this a little bit, speaking of, highlighting what are the existing economic drivers in the municipality, as well as increasing the ability to have a broader spectrum of economic development. Diversification of the economy in the area is obviously very important. This is a new policy piece in the provincial policy statement that wasn't there in the 2014 PPS. But so we've got some there are some policies in the official plan currently that talk about the economic characteristics of the township, obviously speaking to the history of the forestry and tourism and those how impactful those are on the municipality. There are policies in the current official plan that speak to a little bit about agriculture and also aggregate and mineral extraction. But we do have some suggestions from some of the partner ministries speaking to language that can be augmented in the official plan to just let's say stimulate economic development in the township. And we have been Saba has been involved in these discussions as well, and other members of the tourist economy have also attended some of these meetings and have provided comments. And so it's a challenge in an official plan to promote the economic diversity or to stimulate economic diversification, but we can have broad language in the plan that enables it and makes it easier to do stuff from a planning perspective in terms of planning applications and things like that. The next policy issue is waterfront development. And so this is one that will probably also benefit from a discussion paper for everyone. And obviously waterfront development is a key driver in the township and is also a hot button issue as well, with particularly when we end up talking about at capacity lakes. So we've already, Brian has already been in touch with the ministry. We've got some of the raw data. The ministry is in the process of updating some of the at capacity lake data. Not sure that's going to change anything in terms of which lakes are designated at capacity, but it's very, very obviously very important. Waterfront development comes with responsibilities for protecting the quality of the lake. There are policies that can speak to buffering to protect the health of the lake. There's a bit of a challenge, a bit of a disconnect between the zoning bylaw currently and the official plan speaking to the 30-meter water setback. So that comes up quite a bit. I know Tracy has to deal with that question quite a bit. But the official plan does already have policies related to setbacks from the waterfront, but there are ways to make those stronger if that's something the council want to look at. And we will also in waterfront development have to look at Airbnb's second units on waterfront capacity of septics and wells for things like that.
One of the areas again that came through the interviews and the community discussions and just anecdotally understanding the community is this the conversion of cottages to year-round residences. And that's generally a really, really positive thing for communities. But there are some nuances associated with taking grandpa's cottage and turning it into a year-round home. right, that have to be thought about and talked about in your official plan. And there's been some unsettling decisions by the Ontario Land Tribunal that I think point to the need for communities that have waterfront, that have the potential for conversion, to having more robust policies, how to do the conversion and what's important and what we need to look at. And I've been working with a number of municipalities and lawyers on this area, and we'll have some suggestions for you in that area.
One of the prime examples of mostly waterfront development is one of our wards in our township, Dickens Ward. Prior to amalgamation, that ward was outside of any school area. They did not pay any school tax. There was no kids because it was all cottages. Advance that now 22 years or 24 years after amalgamation. There's kids there and we have school bus going down that road.
Right.
So the whole formula for plowing our roads had to change because school bus routes take priority.
Absolutely.
So
It changes municipal services.
waterfront development into full-time residents is going to be a big thing.
Yes, sir.
It's going to affect us in a lot of different ways.
And even in addition to the school busing, you'll just get the demand from people who moved full time
Yeah,
with the increased expectation level of service.
yeah.
That's where the issue comes in with the private roads, because most of the properties are on private roads.
Mhm.
And there's certainly policy approaches to be able to manage this. Again, with the understanding that having people move to your community, it's a good thing, right? They bring diversity, they bring new energies. Just making sure that it's sustainable and it doesn't have it's not a drain on the municipal services is critical.
Mhm. The next issue is growth management. And so there are no specific policies currently in the official plan that really speak to growth management. This ties back to the concept of discussion on intensification. And so there's a lot of cross policy there between growth management and intensification. This is again somewhere an area where we can look at lot sizing and things like that. The next one is kind of more of a housekeeping item, and we've got some other housekeeping items at the end of the list, but there's also the fact that the MMAH is the approval authority here, as Forbes mentioned, for the South Algonquin official plan. So that is reflected in the official plan already. But there needs to be, or should probably be, an expansion to clarify the role of the ministry in the planning in South Algonquin, being the approval authority. The next issue is housing, and this one actually ties into the next. Well, so it's some that we've already discussed already, obviously, in terms of intensification, but ties into additional residential units and affordable housing is sort of the housing catch-all for all of these issues that all communities are facing, quite frankly. And so South Algonquin is not unique in the issues related to affordable housing, attracting new people to the area, allowing seniors to stay in the area, and stay in their homes without having to go elsewhere for assisted living and things like that. So there are lots of things to look at in terms of policy. Again, sort of in the vein of economic development. We can look at introducing policies that stimulate a broad range of a mix of housing types. Additional residential units can be inherently a cheaper accommodation, because I know, again, anecdotally, we heard it at the public meetings. There's huge issues at the mills, for example. Need workers, nowhere for them to live. So there's a big challenge there. Yes.
I think this is the number one issue in not only this township, but many other townships. I don't know whether you could put it in here or not, but in conversation with the District Social Services Board, they're waiting for us as a township to send them a survey of what we think we need in terms of housing. And we haven't really got there yet in terms of how we might do this. But I just didn't know whether you were aware of that or not.
That's doing a regional housing strategy is something that has fallen to many upper tiers. In your case, it's something that you need to work with other partners to do. And, you know, we're getting very close to the 2020 census figures, the details coming out now. And so it would certainly benefit from that type of data. And getting it dialed down to, you know, who is it that we need to house? Where's the problem? Where are the issues? And can we put together a strategy that incents, right? You guys don't build housing, right? That's not your job. But encouraging others to invest, being supportive of community-led projects, all has value.
There was an interesting article in the news this morning about Iroquois Falls, about a project that they're undertaking. And it has to do with shipping containers. How their pulp mill had been closed for the last 10 years, I believe. So this company, they approached this company to come in and or somehow they work together, but they're using this mill area to build these shipping containers into home. In turn, I guess with the partnership that they're doing with Iroquois Falls is that in turn that Iroquois Falls are getting 150 units. And they're building some sort of a subdivision.
That's that type of community partnership that you really need. It's heavy lifting housing, and we can see that every level of government is identified it and is struggling with it, right? And you're the feet in the ground, you're the last line, right? And it really does mean you have to work with others, and I think that's a really good example. But thanks for that. We can certainly take a look at it.
But in the same token, I'm looking at this and there's a really good example in one of our neighboring municipalities where
Come on.
warehouse, I believe you'd call it. It was MD Wafer Board in Birds Creek, where several businesses have been in there over the course of 10 years or longer, where they failed, where they've taken the municipality's money and ran. Right.
And those fix complicated problems, sometimes you have to take risks. Municipalities taking risks with public funds is something that you have to be extremely careful about. And these complex projects, you're advised to get legal, make sure agreements are in place, make sure that if you are making an investment, it's secure and protected. And it doesn't always work out, right? I've been involved with an affordable housing project in Kempville that everybody was going in the same direction, and we were all partnering up, and it was working together. And phase one was magical. In phase two, things started going south, and eventually the project ran into trouble. Right? But it wasn't from the lack of trying, or effort, or care and attention. It was just the nature of the time and the problem. So
Well,
you have to be careful. But it's a critical thing for a community. Everybody should be able to be housed.
that's true, but one of the things that we do face in South Algonquin, it's Councillor Roddick speaking, is lack of land. I got cut off. the hell just happened?